Welcome back to the Dangerous Faith Podcast. Today, we are talking about our story of how Christ has changed our life, a little bit before, a little bit after. Now, one thing I often hear about testimonies is that sometimes we are ashamed if we don't have like the biggest testimony, that if we weren't like in a gang, running drugs and what in and out of prison or whatever. Let's say we have a more tame story. I often hear it's like, oh, my testimony's not that great. And so I just want to caution against that any testimony of how God has changed our life, maybe it's a great story, maybe it's a short story, straightforward and simple, highs and lows, whatever story you have, that's wonderful. That is, it's your story of how God has worked in your life, no matter how exciting or how boring. It's something to be celebrated. Zeke?
When I normally hear the word testimony, I think of like salvation stories. So would it be fair to say that testimony is typically salvation story, but it's not just salvation story? It can be different ways since Christ has worked in your life since then. Is that fair? Or
yeah. It often focuses on that salvation moment. You're exactly right, but it doesn't have to stop there.
Right.
It can be your life after you became a Christian. Because I know for many of us, and I've had seasons like this as well, where we might be a Christian, but we don't take our faith as seriously as we should. And eventually we grow closer to God and we take our faith seriously, and then there's more change there. So testimonies can be varied, they can be wild, they can be tame, but overall point is your testimony is a gift from God, to show how God has shown grace to you to change our life. And for evangelism, we want to be able to share our testimony to tell others about how great our God is. And so if this is you listening out there and you're a Christian, and you don't have your testimony ready, you don't have your story ready, you don't know when it starts, when it stops, you don't have these things figured out, I'd encourage you to sit down one day or one night, write out a few notes, have an outline, because it's a great evangelistic tool. It's a great evangelistic, just something to have to tell people about how wonderful Christ is. And so with me today, I have Blake and I have Zeke, and they've been gracious enough to agree to share their testimony about how God has changed their life. And I told them they can go into, whatever level of detail they would like. And it can start way before they were saved. It can start a little bit before they were saved, up to them. And it can go however long afterwards, after they've been saved as well. So they can go up to now or just a little bit after. Anyways, it can vary. But Blake or Zeke, who would like to go first?
It started in the year 1996, a cold Sunday evening. I was born at 12:02 p.m.
Oh my gosh, dude. I was born at 11:59.
It was 12 something. I don't remember.
Oh, no, that's cool.
Was it 11:59 p.m. or a.m.?
I'll ask my mom when I get home.
That's a big difference.
It's a huge difference.
For me, I grew up in church. I had the typical story for any young Christian in Alabama, for the most part, excluding the crazy things that Nate said, like, things that happen to some people, like drugs and prison and stuff. I didn't have anything like that. So I grew up in church. I was raised in church. And whenever I was 12, I actually had the experience. It was during what some people might not know. It's called a revival. We do these twice a year. We'd have a quote unquote revival, but it was always scheduled. So we scheduled to have, it is weird, but anywho, long story short, we'd go to church every day for a whole week, in other words, and we'd have someone come speak for that week, or a couple people come speak, and it was just a normal church service. And so during that revival, for 2 or 3 days in a row, I felt like God was calling me, and I kept pushing away. Pastor would say, like, if there's anyone who needs to accept Christ, et cetera, they give the gospel message, and I just kept hearing this nagging voice in my head, like, you don't need to do it. If you'll just wait 30 more seconds, it'll be over with. You'll feel fine. You can go home, and it won't matter in an hour. And I did that for 2 or 3 days, and then finally got down to the last day of it. Like, all the other stuff, too. Like, your friends are in the back. You don't want to do it tonight. They'll see you, and they're going to, they're older than you, and they're cool, and you'll be embarrassed. You don't want to do that. And then it got down to the last day, the Friday, and I couldn't wait any longer. And I was like, well, I don't remember what I thought, but something along the lines of, if I don't do this now, I don't know when I'm going to do it. So I went ahead. Funny enough, as a nervous 12-year-old who was at the time, if I was being honest, like I don't think I fully understood everything that the gospel entailed, which is, to be fair, for a 12-year-old. I just knew that Jesus was real and that he was my only way to be saved. So I got down there and they prayed with me. And funny enough, normally like you'll pray for a minute and then you'll get up and they're like, "How do you feel?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't feel good. Let's pray again." So we prayed like 3 or 4 times, and then eventually they're like, I just felt this like sense of overwhelming like peace about me. And then we got up. They announced it to the congregations like he's accepted Christ into his life, and then went on from there. And then honestly, after that, that's where part of things were uphill as far as like, in the sense of, I was saved. Like things can't get any better than that. But some things I wish if I could go back and change, or something I would change in the future going forward for whenever I'm hopefully in a situation that my parents or the church members were in, is I had like zero discipleship after that, in the sense of like, we went to church on Sunday morning, went to Sunday school, and that was it. Like, no one ever said anything. Like, we always had an altar call at the end of service, like, "Hey, if you want to join the church, come forward." I didn't know what that meant. Why do I need to join the church? I thought I was saved. Like, what does that mean? What do you do? And stuff like that. So I also wasn't discipled in other things, like, what does it mean to be Christian? What's different about being Christian? Like, what's expected of me, et cetera, et cetera. And so I struggled for a lot of years with security on my salvation. Like I didn't know how to read the Bible. Like, and you might think, well, you just read it, but like the Bible is, you can just read it, but there's also ways that are better to read it than others. Edit that out. But like if I'm reading poetry, I'm going to read it differently than I would read like historical documents. So I didn't learn that until when did we meet?
I guess 2019. At some point.
Probably somewhere around that time. I didn't know any of that. Nathaniel here got me into all of that and really helped me like strengthen. He's probably the first, if not second person to ever really disciple me. And I really was missing out. And I can, just looking back now in my life, like that's been the biggest void that I was missing in my Christian faith, was someone to walk alongside me who's been doing it for years and kind of show me the ropes, because this faith isn't meant to be lived alone. I mean, that's why we have church to begin with. It's supposed to be made in community with God's people. But to get into a little bit more of a backstory. So I was saved at 12, lived a relatively normal Christian life through high school. I didn't, kept cussing to a minimum, didn't party, didn't drink, didn't get messed up with anything crazy. And then I was considered like the goody two-shoes of my friend group, probably to the point of annoyance, to be fair. And then I went off to college. Oh, I went to community college for 2 years, stayed at home during that time. Nothing really changed. And then 21-ish, I moved off for college to Huntsville and was living with 2 roommates, and I was finally on my own for the first time. And it was really the first time that I could choose to not go to church. Like all the way up to this point, I always had either my mom made me as a child or guilted me as an adult. And now for the first time, it was my choice whether I actually wanted to go or not. And I didn't go for a long time. I probably occasionally visited, but realistically, probably not for like a year or two. And then I think I was playing Pokemon Go. Whenever that first came out, I think it was like a year after it came out. I was playing that at Huntsville Park and happened to see some people throwing Frisbee. And I walked past them and they said, "Hey, you want to throw with us?" I didn't know these people. I was like, "Yeah, sure." Threw with them for like an hour. They're like, "Yeah, we're helping start up a church here in Huntsville." And kind of got to know them. They asked me if I want to go eat with them afterwards. So I talked to them, kind of got involved with that and started getting back in church. And then eventually I moved to Coleman a year or so later. And then, long story short, got in a bad relationship, wasn't healthy. I made stupid mistakes. That person made stupid mistakes. Well, I don't want to be ambiguous about the gender.
No, be ambiguous. I like it. Adds a little bit of mystery to it.
But, I did some really dumb things and was in a really bad place where I met Nathaniel, and he really helped me out of that. There's a time where I had friends and family who said that they were done with me. They don't want to have anything to do with me. And thankfully, those relationships have been mended now, but I really don't know where I'd be had God not sent Nathan from stupid Maryland. And
Dirty, nasty Maryland.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry to all of our Maryland listeners.
The one.
Me.
Yeah, just Nate.
So I would say that's probably been the biggest place where God's really, aside from his salvation, obviously that's biggest, but since then, that's been the biggest one of I had no way. I couldn't, I was in this position for probably almost 2 years, a year and a half, and God gave me someone who actually helped me think through it, actually helped me, stuck with me, played the long game, as we like to say. People are not categories, they're long stories, and he reminds me of that constantly, so that's why I'm not allowed to win arguments with him. But anywho, so yeah, God kind of helped me out of that situation, and then since then I struggle like every other Christian, but I just see an overwhelming presence of God in my life, and I'm reminded of that every single day.
Yeah.
Any questions?
It's been incredible to see your story, and very active in your church, teaching lots of classes, mentoring young people around you, being active at your school. You are married, and so, Chloe's wonderful. You can hear her story with a Grow with Chloe episode that we've uploaded before, so she shares some of her story as well. So, Zeke, I can honestly say God's done and will continue to do incredible things through you and your story. So I appreciate you sharing.
Okay, so let me go into a little bit more detail because I think it'll be helpful in case there's someone in the future who's desperate enough to listen to this.
Me.
Yeah. Okay, so a little bit of background on that part of my life where I went from. So it went from high school to college to not really going to church or anything. Finally got back into it, and then I forgot to mention there's that dry period where I stopped going again, and I moved to Coleman, and I was in a bad relationship. Some would call abusive. Most would call abusive. And I would like to say that there's the reason why a lot of people didn't want to talk to me at that time was because I kind of had to block. I was forced to block everyone out of my life, family, friends, etc. And the biggest thing that helped me, or looking back, the biggest help was one, having someone who was consistently there and didn't just give up like Nate. And then two, coming to the realization that as the friend, if I was to have to watch someone else go through that again, my biggest advice to myself would be, you can't force them to do it. It's something they have to choose. You stay with them as long as you can, and you help them through that. As soon as they call and they're ready to end it, you're there. But as much as it hurts, there's nothing you can really do about it, unless it's to the point where you need to call the police. There's certain times where that's the case, but if it's not at that point, then you kind of have to let them make their own decision.
You walk with people through what they're going through, and I think you're right, Zeke. They have to make that decision ultimately on their own. As much as we would like to make the decision for them, we do have to just be there until they're ready. Yeah. So
I had a loved one who tried to force me, which that didn't work. I just went right back. It's
same here.
So
yeah,
I gotcha.
And that's the gist of my story.
Well, I appreciate you sharing. Blake, any questions for Zeke, or are we going to turn to you?
When's the quiz on this?
Tomorrow.
Oh, no. I forgot to take notes. No. Dude, I really appreciate hearing your story. I've heard it before. We've talked about.
Yeah.
I talked about your testimony several times.
You just like to follow in my footsteps.
Just literally, when people hear my testimony, they're going to be like,
I think you just...
literally, when they hear my testimony, they're going to be like, man, was Zeke and Blake dating? Are they like brothers? But I guess I'll start with mine. But pretty much, I had the same kind of upbringing as Zeke. I grew up in more of the Pentecostal scene. So my very first taste of God and Jesus was through Hellfire and Brimstone. And so growing up, I had a very my relationship was based off of fear with God from the very beginning, and it wasn't anything that my parents or my grandparents did. It was just one of those things that when you're just a young kid and you can only take away like certain knowledge that you know from sermons. That's just you kind of build your belief system on that. And so I would say that I've been to the altar when I was growing up as a kid. Countless of times. And to be honest with you, I'm unlike Zeke. I don't think I can name an age where I was saved. I don't think I ever was truly saved as a young kid. I think more so it was, what's the best way to say this without, to me, it was kind of like taking a sugar pill. It was like I would go to the altar, feel good. I would think I would experience God's peace, but instead of clinging to that and doing things with it, I would just enjoy the peace and then just kind of go back to doing my own thing because now I felt better. Growing up as a kid, I struggled with anxiety a lot. Like I had panic attacks a lot. Never went and got medicated for it or anything like that. Just one of those things where it kind of struggled with it. And I guess kind of what kind of started that kind of I literally would call it an unhealthy relationship with me and God was whenever I had panic attacks, a lot of people would blame it on my sinful lifestyle as a kid. I unfortunately I got addicted to some not good content, and it at the ripe age of 8 years old, and kind of stuck with me pretty much for a long time, for a very, very long time. And a lot of people would contribute my anxiety to that, and they would say, if you just quit, God's gonna heal you and all that stuff. And there were times where I would quit and would quit viewing stuff like that, but it's like sometimes my anxiety just never went away. And I was like, well, okay, that's weird. I thought God, loved me, da-da-da-da-da. But anyways, so I struggled with that. So a lot of my prayer and a lot of the time I spent with God is normally whenever I was having anxiety attacks as a young kid. So kind of moving forward into high school, I was considered a goody two-shoes amongst my friend group as well. Didn't drink, party. I quit cussing in the 9th grade. But that was based on a girl. That wasn't because of Christ. That was because of the girl I was dating at the time, who I dated all throughout high school. Did not like my cussing, so I quit for her, which I'm kind of grateful for because now I don't do it at all. So, going through high school, I would claim to be a Christian because it was just what I grew up with. I don't think I ever really, like I said, I only went to God when I needed Him, kind of like that Jelly Roll song. Only talk to God when I need Him. Yeah, what?
I've never heard that.
Jelly Roll?
Yeah.
Dude, he's a trip. Yeah.
We'll have to show you.
We'll have to show you, yeah. But anyways, I'd only talk to God when I needed Him. Didn't really, I would go to church, but kind of like how Zeke would say, it was forced or guilted. There was never a day where I just wanted to go to church. And then after high school, me and that girl broke up. That was rough. I fell into a deep depression. And just kind of lost my way once I got to college. I experienced freedom, and I experienced the wrong people at the wrong time, and it led me to doing just a bunch of crazy things. Never drank, never did anything like that, but just the very pretty much when you give college kids too much freedom. I experienced a lot of that. And ended up getting hurt even worse in college. Ended up getting in a relationship where the girl was very sweet and she was a very Christian girl, but because of my influence that I had over her, I caused her to stumble very, very badly. And that was like the beginning of my, I guess the beginning of like a downfall, like the beginning of going to rock bottom was that relationship right there. A thing that you should know about me too, as I talk about these relationships, because relationships are a huge part of my testimony. I'm the kind of person that when I get into a relationship, that person becomes my everything. And some people say like, "Oh, that's good." It was unhealthy. It was a sort of, I wasn't secure in my identity, so I needed somebody else's words to make me feel good about myself. So it was deep rooted in insecurity. So I quit college just because I was like, it's not for me. I was lazy. all of the above, and I ended up getting a job at Walmart distribution. And, well, my bad. Before I got the job at Walmart distribution, I was kind of just working like retail jobs and stuff like that. And I remember, I don't remember who it was. I think I visited St. John's one day, and Christy Guest. So this lady at our church, Christy, she came up to me and she told me about this young adult Bible study. And I went to it, and that's when I met Nate and Zeke and all of our friends on the podcast. And I kind of it was kind of like my first kind of taste getting back into Christianity. Well, I kind of did that for a little bit. I really enjoyed. I felt like I was making some growth. If y'all, I don't know.
From then to now, I'd say
From then to now. I mean, but in that when y'all first met me,
the initial stage, it's hard to see growth at the beginning.
So I think in the beginning, I think I was just kind of getting like my toes wet and stuff. So eventually, I got a job at Walmart distribution, and come to find out, Nate, Zeke, Isaac, and my best friend Justin, we all worked at Walmart distribution for a little bit, and it was awesome. It was just the best time. For real though, like Walmart distribution was terrible, but Fish Shift, when it was us, was like
working with people was fun.
Yeah,
but the work sucked.
Dude, it was so much fun
For some of us.
I didn't mind it.
Shut up, Nate. You're a liar. But anyways, unfortunately though, as time went on at Walmart distribution, I started, because it is a place where a spirit of depression kind of hangs over it.
Demon possessed?
I would say it's demon possessed for real. Like there's just something about.
No, I'm just kidding, Nate. I'm sorry.
There might be.
I know how much you love Walmart.
There might be, Nate.
This is a major employer in our area. So.
They are a great place.
They are a great place.
Y'all bring in a lot of taxes for Coleman.
Look, I'll use some nuance on this. Okay, my experience at Walmart distribution was not good because of my fault. It was not anything of the distribution place. It was all my fault.
Legally speaking,
it was all my fault. But anyways, so at Walmart distribution, I started hanging around. I was introduced to a bunch of people from different walks of life, which was something I was never, it was kind of foreign to me because like I said, I work retail, but the most people you encounter in retail is minimum like five people. And this was a place where just in my one area, there was like almost like 80 people. So you encountered a whole bunch of walks of life. And unfortunately, because I was weak in my faith, I was influenced by a lot of people. And lo and behold, I ended up transferring shift, and I met this girl who I am not speaking ill about her. I pray for her daily. But when we met each other, we were both in very not good positions in our life. And I ended up getting in a relationship with her, and it ended up being probably the worst relationship I've ever been in my life. Like, as Zeke said, some would call it borderline abusive. I will say Zeke's relationship, his was very, very, very bad. Mine is like pebbles compared to his. But there was some mental abuse, and just it was just not a good relationship. And I really fell away from God. I quit going back to the Bible study. I just quit doing everything. Like I started living with her, so all my time was just spent with her. And this was about a year doing this. And I'll never forget it. This is where my testimony really picks up. Like, this was the moment where God had finally changed everything. I'll never forget. I don't know the day.
I'll never forget. I don't know the day.
I don't know the day, but I'll never forget the moment. And I'll never forget where I was. I was on lane 1 at the Walmart at the shipping dock.
Fifth shift?
First shift.
Oh, yeah.
First shift.
That's right.
So I was in a trailer. And I remember I was having just this terrible anxiety attack. I've been having it all week. I just thought I was going to die and there was going to be nothing. That's all I could think about, was just dying and how life is so short and so fragile. And I remember I just was just so upset. And I'll never forget, I heard a testimonial from an atheist about his near-death experience. And I never finished watching it, but I just remember the part where he said that he saw Christ, and Christ lifted him up out of his body and was showing him all the wonders of the world. And now, if people know me today, they know I'm not a big fan of the near-death experience stories. But for some reason, and I think it was just God working in that moment, something just hit me in the chest. I'll never forget. It felt like the whole weight of everything came down on top of me. And I remember I have never cried that hard in my life. And it wasn't like I was sitting there like begging. I was just literally all I could was just Jesus. That's all I could say was just Jesus. And then from that point forward, it was like I got out of that relationship. I started going to church more, and it was just like an immediate transformation in my heart. And I just started chasing after God. Even when the doubt still hit me, I just remembered, like, in that moment, Jesus met me at my lowest point. And I think to this day, I think that is when I was truly saved. When I finally knew, I didn't just know of Jesus, I got to know Jesus personally. And from then on, I'd say everything's been tough.
You mean your life didn't immediately just become rainbow and sunshine?
Let me tell you something, guys. I like to say I have an incomplete testimony. My testimony won't be complete until I stand before God and tell him all of the things I could have done for him. And when I get to spend eternity with him, I think that's when I'll have a completed testimony. But my testimony, gosh, man, it's like the closer I get to God every day, the more sinful I feel. But it's just been an incredible journey. Every day, I just feel like there's something new I learn about myself. The biggest thing that I think that I've learned about myself that I want to kind of touch on just for a second is God used my... So I realized I have a problem with relationships. And I would use relationships to kind of fill the void with God. And I think that's one of the biggest growths for me was really putting God first and him using my love and idol worship for having a earthly relationship. I've just now that I'm working through all that stuff and learning what a heavenly relationship is like with my Father, it's just completely changed how I view my earthly relationships. And so I will say this: if you're somebody and you feel like you struggle with like one specific sin more than others, don't ever get into the mentality that I had where it's like, this is going to consume you. Because God can use that to open your eyes and open your heart, and he can reveal to you that it has no hold on you. And if you just supplement him with whatever that is that you're needing fulfilled, he's going to meet you there, and he's going to satisfy that. And yeah, the immediate transformation was my heart telling myself I'm going to follow Christ. But it's a long lifetime journey of just constantly getting better.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Is you always hear these testimonies. Like there's this really good YouTube channel that does them. Delafe, Delafe.
I know what you mean. Yeah,
they do really good testimonies. Like the ones where like they actually have been to prison and stuff.
Yeah.
And some that are just cool. Crazy, even if they haven't been. But it's easy to listen to something like that and be like, oh, wow, I need God to just do something miraculous like that one time and then I'm good. And it's like, that's not how it works.
No.
I mean, not only in my life do I have an example, but like just look at the Bible. Like you have Adam and Eve. God creates all of creation and puts them in it and does all this, and they still turn from him. Look at literally any example besides Jesus. Yeah. You have the whole, the slaves in Egypt. All of them are slaves in Egypt for like 400, some of them died obviously, but for 400 years.
Yeah, they're all enslaved.
Whatever. And then God rescues them, splits an entire sea, kills the army that was enslaving them, and 3 days later...
They want to go back.
back.
And it's so accurate to like modern times, like how we are today. Like it really, like I remember I would pray those prayers. If you just do this one thing for me, I would follow. And that's not how it works. Yeah.
I've had so many of those, and I haven't fallen through with any of them, probably.
No.
We bargain, and what we show here with Zeke's testimony and Blake's testimony is that this is real life. It gets messy, it gets ugly, and sometimes in churches, we try to keep things really pretty. Mm-hmm. Try to have this facade of everything's going great, But if you look behind the scenes at who we are on the inside, we're big messes for the most part, really. But God takes the messes and he does beautiful things. And so I appreciate both of you sharing your testimony. And again, I want to go back to what I said at the beginning of the episode. We all have a testimony. If you're a Christian, you have a story to tell. And one of the most powerful things you can do with evangelism, telling people about Christ, is telling people about how God has changed you through the power of the gospel, grace and mercy, nothing that we did to deserve salvation. God did all of it for us, and we're grateful and thankful. And out of that heart of thankfulness, we then want to live lives that please him in obedience. And so, but you can't tell that story if you're not ready to do so. So I'd encourage you, like I said, take a piece of paper and just write a brief outline and just practice a little bit. It doesn't have to be long and extended, but be able to tell your story in a few minutes, 5 or 10 minutes, and try to share it. And you'll never know how your story impacts others. But anyways, this was Zeke and Blake from our Dangerous Life episodes that are under the broader umbrella of the Dangerous Faith podcast. And so they decided to share their story, and I appreciate them. And we'll have more members along the way. I know Mackenzie wants to share, and I think a couple others, Justin as well, Mariah. So they'll be on future episodes of this. But anyways, gentlemen, thank you for coming on. I hope that wasn't too scarring for you to say, to share. And again, I think it'll bless a lot of people, because some people are at their end of the rope. They're at the bottom of the pit, and knowing that someone else struggled with what they're struggling with might be the thing that helps them to turn to Jesus and find the strength to continue.
Yeah, we kept it pretty surface level today, but if we ever want to do it again, it doesn't bother me to go into more detail for people who might be going through the same thing.
Yeah. I can do this. I can do the same thing. So
in your testimony, you can go, depending on the group of people you're sharing with, people will have varying levels of detail, but we can also share more of our story too. But anyways, this is the Dangerous Faith podcast, signing out, and we'll have more episodes as the weeks go by.